The second round of dialogue between Colombia's government and the National Liberation Army begins in Mexico. In Turkey and Syria, the death toll climbed to 36,000 1 week after the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that hit the countries. And Iranian Ibrahim Raisi travels to China for a 3-day visit aimed at strengthening economic cooperation. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The second cycle of the peace talks between the government of Colombia and the National Liberation Army started on Monday in Mexico. The talks will address issues such as the bilateral ceasefire and the incorporation of civil society in the construction of total peace. Both sides will also analyze the results of the first report of the humanitarian caravan, which will allow for the effective implementation of humanitarian relief for communities affected by the armed conflict. The new formal cycle of negotiations was reactivated only 3 months after Colombia's President Gustavo Petro took office in August and under his policy of total peace. The delegations held a first round of dialogues between November and December in Caracas. In a statement, Colombia's High Commissioner for Peace thanked the hospitality of Mexico, who serves as guarantor country together with Venezuela, Chile, Norway, and more recently Brazil, adding that Sweden, Germany, Switzerland, and Spain would assist the peace talks table as accompanying countries in this second cycle.
The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has indicated that the government has the conviction and the purpose of participating in the construction of a common future for our region, in full respect for the sovereignty and characteristics of each people and each country. The fact that Mexico has assumed the role of guarantor country and is hosting this second cycle of dialogue confirms that we have a pacifist foreign policy and commitment to peace. I reiterate our commitment to help generate the necessary conditions to support the agreements and the dialogue between the parties.
The head of the ELN delegation to the peace talks with the Colombian government, Pablo Beltran, indicated they seek to promote the changes that the country needs and to put an end to the internal armed conflict.
Our peace talks table is an instrument of the mandate for change, whose agenda seeks to agree on transformations and to put an end to the armed conflict. It advances by confronting the difficulties inherited from the old regime, but with the determination to achieve a comprehensive and lasting peace that resolves the causes that generate the daily political and armed social conflict. It is understood that it will not produce a revolution by contract, nor will it decree an automatic demobilization of the rebellions.
Meanwhile, the head of the Colombian government delegation to the peace talks, Oti Patiño, stressed that the ceasefire is a central issue in the talks between the parties.
It is up to us, as a table, as a delegation, to reinterpret the ceasefire and see it not only as a reduction of armed confrontations, but fundamentally as a reduction of hostilities towards the civilian population and of illegal activities generating damage and violence. And not also in the territories, but also in the consequences of these damages of violence on other Colombian territories and even other countries.
Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso did not appear before the National Parliament on Monday to account for his alleged connection to a corruption scheme in public companies involving his brother-in-law Danilo Carrera. The president had been summoned on Monday by the specialized commission which investigates the so-called Encuentro case regarding the alleged corruption scheme. The president of the commission, Viviana Veloz, indicated that the head of state sent a letter in which he apologized for not attending due to agenda issues. Veloz stated that the president's appearance was important for the population, for which she claimed that Lasso's action only seeks to guarantee impunity and protect Danilo's career, thus obstructing the work of the commission. Young Panamanians ratified their will to give continuity to the ideology of General Omar Torrijos, who will be 94 years old this February 13th. At the commemoration, activist Monica Sierra asserted that the new generations of the Isthmus advocate for the values Omar Torrijos instilled and promote the inclusive development of the country. Also, his son and former president of the Republic between 2004 and 2009, Martín Torrijos, asserted that young people who did not no Omar, seeing his legacy as reference to make the necessary changes. On Sunday, at the headquarters of the Latin American and Caribbean Parliament, the national meeting Balances and Challenges of Torrijos in the 21st Century was held, where the project called Vision 50 was subscribed. The initiative takes as its focal points the public policies initiated by Torrijos with emphasis on popular participation, especially of the indigenous peoples. In Honduras, members of the National Congress reached an agreement to elect the 15 magistrates of the Supreme Court of Justice. The plenary will meet this coming Wednesday to elect the members of the judiciary. This was achieved after an extensive 3-hour meeting at the congressional facilities. The heads of the benches of the different political parties that make up the legislature celebrated the agreement, guaranteeing that the selection of the new Supreme Court will not be inclined in favor of any party and will seek to guarantee the stability of Honduran state. Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez appointed the director of the Federal Intelligence Agency, Agustin Rossi, as the new head of cabinet. An official statement from the Casa Rosada announced the replacement of the current head of cabinet, Juan Mansur, effective February 15th. In his place, the government designated Agustin Rossi, who served as director of the Federal Intelligence Agency since June 2022. In the statement, President Fernandez extended his gratitude to Mansur for his work and his political and personal commitment during his tenure since 2021. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Search and rescue efforts continue in Turkey and Syria after the earthquake registered in both countries, which have left more than 36,000 dead so far. According to the Turkey Emergency Coordination Center, the number of victims of the earthquake has reached a total of 31,643. Ankara authorities also point out that a woman was rescued in the province of Hatay after remaining 175 hours under rubble. The Syrian executive confirmed that the number of dead in the country as a result of the earthquake stands at 4,614, a figure that includes the dead in the areas controlled by the foreign occupation forces and terrorist groups in Syria. The head of UN aid in Syria, Martin Griffith, indicated that the rescue phase is coming to an end and the urgency now is to provide shelter, food, education, and psychological care to those affected. Meanwhile, groups of firefighters and canine guides continue the search and rescue work in the Turkish city of Adıyaman, one of the most affected by the earthquake registered in the country a week ago. The rescue corps continue working in coordination with international teams in the hope of finding more survivors from under the rubble of more than 3,000 infrastructures that collapsed as a consequence of the quakes. According to the latest information presented by the local authorities, there is still no exact number of dead people in the city. However, there is talk of more than 4,000 in Adıyaman alone. At least 1,000 people have been rescued and more than 50,000 people have been affected.
Of Adıyaman was one of the most affected ones. We have a large number of damaged buildings, and many of them are no longer in living condition. Now we are providing food to all people that need it, and we are also working to provide housing for them.
In Syria, the Director General of Civil Aviation informed on Monday that at least 80 planes have arrived in the country with humanitarian aid after the earthquake of February 6th. A total of 82 planes arrived at the 3 Syrian airports. The planes are from various countries, including 6 from Iran, 11 from Iraq, and 3 from Russia. In addition, Saudi Arabia requested permission for its planes carrying humanitarian aid to land in the country. For the time being, an air corridor for Saudi aircraft is being organized. The massive earthquake struck several provinces in southeastern Turkey and northwestern Syria last Monday. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees reports that an estimated 5.3 million people have been displaced in Syria after last week's earthquake. Syria was hit by a 5.4 earthquake on February 6, which caused the collapse of multiple buildings in the north part of the country. The international organization said there were already around 6.8 million people displaced by the conflict in the Arab nation before the earthquake. The Secretary of the United Nations Organization for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, commented that Syria has not received even half of the support it should have. Thousands of Israelis protested Monday against a government's plan that could weaken the nation's judiciary. Demonstrators gathered in front of the nation's parliament with Israeli flags and signs, with messages such as "There is no democracy without equality" and "Destroying the country to avoid trial," in clear reference to the perception that Prime Minister Netanyahu's desire to hold his corruption trials might be behind his government's planned judicial reforms. Palestinian crowd, despite the protests and a plea from President Isaac Herzog on Sunday not to start the legislative process. The government proceeded as planned with the introduction of the bill in Parliament on Monday. The Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC) condemned in Egypt the Israeli government's decision to regularize new settlements in the occupied territory of the West Bank. The 22-member league said in a statement that the new measures reflect the extreme character of Benjamin Netanyahu's government, which threatens to inflame the situation in the occupied territories and the regional stability. On the other hand, the 57-member OIC denounced that Israel's settlement policy violates international resolutions and undermines the two-state solution to the Middle East conflict. Israel announced Sunday the regularization of 9 new settlements in the occupied West Bank without a state permit and said it will approve in the coming days the construction of new housing in the existing colonies. And the United Nations also condemned Israel's decision, as UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric stated that the organization's Secretary General Antonio Guterres is deeply concerned by the announcement and reiterated that all settlements are illegal under international law.
The Secretary General is deeply concerned by yesterday's announcement by the Israeli Security Cabinet that it has decided to authorize 9 settlement outposts in the occupied West Bank. If these measures are implemented, they would further undermine prospects for a viable two-state solution. He reiterates that all settlements are illegal under international law and a substantial obstacle to peace. He calls for unilateral actions that erode the prospect for a political solution on the basis of United Nations resolutions, international law, and bilateral agreements to stop.
We have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the South. In the United States, at least one person died after 2 trains derailed in the states of South Carolina and Texas. In the state of Texas, 16 rail cars derailed in Montgomery County, while authorities warn about a possible hazardous material emergency. At the same time, in South Carolina, authorities mobilized to attend a similar event in the town of Enore. The event follows the recent derailment of a train carrying highly toxic chemicals in the state of Ohio, which has resulted in an unprecedented environmental disaster, endangering the residents of the area. Eritrea's President Isaias Afwerki has accused the U.S. of supporting rebels during the recently concluded civil war in northern Ethiopia. President Afwerki stated during an interview with local media that the peace deal signed between Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front was rushed by the U.S. to prevent the rebels from losing in the battlefield. Last week, the reclusive leader denied reports that Eritrean troops committed war crimes in neighboring Ethiopia, where they had been deployed to fight alongside federal troops and pro-government militia. Eritrea's army supported Ethiopian forces during war against the TPLF and has been accused by the United States and right groups of some of the conflict's worst atrocities. In Iran, state media report that President Ebrahim Raisi travels to China for a 3-day visit aimed at strengthening economic cooperation. The trip comes in response to an official invitation by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Both presidents met for the first time last September in Uzbekistan at a summit for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. where the Iranian president called for expanded ties. President Raisi is expected to hold private talks with President Xi, and delegations from both countries are due to sign cooperation documents. Local media added that the Iranian president will also take part in meetings with Chinese businessmen and Iranians living in the country. Iran and China have strong economic ties, especially in the fields of energy, transit, agriculture, trade, and investment. Both countries signed in 2021 a 25-year strategic cooperation pact. In Russia, the intelligence service reported that the United States is actively recruiting insurgents linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda to attack Russian territory. According to official reports from the agency, the U.S. military mainly selects fighters from the Caucasus and Central Asia region, and then carries out recruitment from the Al-Tanf military base in Syria. According to the Community of Independent States, Washington's troops have already added to their ranks at least 60 terrorists already active in the Middle East, who are learning to make and use improvised explosive devices. Likewise, the Kremlin assured that with these actions, the United States is demonstrating that it has lost any moral principle in its obsession to bleed Russia dry. In Germany, the National Armed Forces began training Ukrainian soldiers on Monday to operate the Leopard 2 tanks. The training will take place mainly at the Armored Troops School in Munster, Lower Saxony, according to the German Defense Ministry. The authorities intend to complete these trainings in an accelerated manner in order to synchronize them with the delivery of the tanks themselves. 14 units of the Leopard 2A6 model is the number promised to Kiev by the German government, to which more German-made tanks could be added, which other European countries plan to supply. The European Union prepares a new package of sanctions and economic restrictions against Russia. The European Bureau said it plans additional trade bans and on imports into the EU of rubber, asphalt, vehicle exports, construction machinery, and more for the 10th sanctions package to be discussed on February 15th. The bans will also extend to the export of electronic components that Russia could use to make weapons. As far as diamonds are concerned, it is not clear at this stage where they will be included in the package. The European Union will also add 130 names to the list of Russian entities, military and officials installed in Ukraine. According to the same source, 4 Russian banks, among them Alpha Bank, are exposed to new financial sanctions. Former Italian Premier Silvio Berlusconi has blamed President Volodymyr Zelensky for the armed conflict in Ukraine, putting himself at odds again with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's support for Kiev. Berlusconi, whose Forza Italia party is part of Meloni's right-wing coalition government, is a longtime friend and ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The former premier said the war in Ukraine would have never happened had Volodymyr Zelensky ceased attacking the 2 autonomous republics of Donbass. Berlusconi also criticized Meloni for meeting the Ukrainian president, telling reporters that he would not have done the same if he was premier. The comments drew a quick rebuttal from Meloni's office, which said that the government's support for Ukraine is solid and unwavering. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.